There we go. Okay, Matthias, you're on.
Yes. Welcome. This is the PulpCon 2025. And we are going to discuss a delicate topic here. In our organization, we have adopted a repository containing some parts of a Pulp-UI. That is a node-based, or how do you say that? JavaScript, or whatever that's really called these days. Application to run in a web browser that can be served alongside a Pulp, or separate and then linked up. And I want to start by showing you what we have, and then we need to discuss where it's going to be. In the chat, I have put a link to a HackMD where I will try to take notes, and maybe if you want to shortcut, then you can do two. So the Pulp-UI, we have a bit of a user manual, and I must say I tried this morning. When you have a Pulp running on your localhost port 8080 in some way, without SSL, I think, it is actually as easy as it's described here. You go to the repository, check out the main branch, run npm install, and then npm start. Now, the first thing that happens when you run npm install, it tells you about, I think, 7 vulnerabilities in that code base. We will come to that later. Now it says open localhost 8002, and when you do that, you will find something that looks about this. So the nice part is there is a bit of translation here. I chose Français for no particular reason. I didn't see German here. But also, as you can see, not everything's translated. User access doesn't really sound French. For example. It gets completely obvious if you choose what I believe could be Japanese, then you just see it right away. Also something apparently... the container running the actual Pulp may have gone away. What the UI also gets us, give me a second, I will try to get that up again. What you also see in the UI is it has a dark mode, it has a light mode. It links to our documentation. It shows you some details in the About screen. You can log in, which is currently done by saving the password in the browser. What's the thing? Not ephemeral, but actual application storage of the browser. So the container is currently starting up. So then we have the status page that you might have seen a second ago.
It's a very clever way, Matthias, of showing that the UI runs independently of the Pulp instance itself.
Right. And, which wouldn't have been my default setup for production, but that's just easier for development.
And the categories on the side are dependent on the container it's hooked up to, and the Pulp instance it's hooked up to. So now that you don't have access, you see that the Pulp RPM and the
vanished.
Yeah.
Right. So we should have them back now. Here they are. Yeah, what it shows you, for example, if you're running on a non-cloud storage-based system, how many package you can still put into your instance. So you know something about my computer now. Obviously, this container doesn't run Redis for whatever reason. I don't know. It has the typical 2 online workers. Yes, that's 2. It has 2 content app processes and 2 application or API app content processes. It has a nice feature here down there where you get the actual JSON that was returned from the server, nicely formatted. Do I need to reload the language to get all the plugins back? Yes. So it shows you a list of the installed signing services. You cannot edit them, which is the way Pulp does, because the signing services can only be manipulated by an administrator in the machine. It does show something about tasks that have run. And you can schedule some of the cleanup tasks, which should not be necessary anymore because you can also just schedule them. You can do the user management here. That is a nice thing. You can list all the roles. Maybe you can, no, I don't see create. So this is time for a bit of history. This UI was transformed from something that was written as the Galaxy UI, for the new Galaxy being a plugin to Pulp. And then the folks over at the Ansible organization said, hey, we can make that to look like a Pulp-UI for you. And that's what they did. And this is what we received. So I think the idea there is that you cannot change the roles that they put in place. And that's why you can only look at the roles here. And you see the permissions that are part of one specific role. As coming from Galaxy, there is actually the ability to manipulate Ansible repositories and remotes. Then there's the same for file, which I think has been retrofitted. There is a very not yet under construction page for RPM. And I think that's all of the tour I can give you. So back to, that's what we have. Question is, where do we want this thing to be? And
is that the question to us?
that's the part of the discussion here, yes.
I feel like having the happy path would be good, like being able to create a repo, upload a package, publish it, and then install the package. That'd be awesome.
Yes, I agree. I would rephrase it a little bit. I think one of the questions is, what is the UI good for? Or what can it be good for? Obviously, you can use Pulp. I mean, we've seen it all. Everyone on this call kind of does that without the UI, I guess, at least for most of the content types out there. It can be used. The UI really should be the top-notch user experience to tell how it can be used. And for that, exactly, what is the happy path? We don't need to teach all the edge cases that users come up with, but we want to showcase the happy path here. Jared.
Like David said, we should be implementing the main workflows like upload and sync and publish, but we should make it so that like they're convenient, like they're like one-click buttons. So like we can create like a custom page that says like, hey, do you want to upload a piece of content? And then you click on it, and then from this page you can choose what type of content you want to upload, or maybe we even put in some logic that auto-analyzes the artifact and tries to guess when you upload it. And then it's just like a drag and drop. You drag the file onto the web page, and then you can choose which repository it goes into and whatnot. And so basically a layer to hide all the things we're doing behind the scenes.
Grant?
Yeah, we've talked about that at PulpCLI as well. The REST API gives you very fine-grained access, but you have to know a lot about Pulp to use it. The CLI abstracts you a little, but you're still talking largely directly to the REST API. That what Jared's talking about, or what I could tend to in my head think of as wizards, right? There's a higher level of code that understands how to do that.
That's exactly the word I wanted to throw in here at this moment.
Exactly right. Exactly right. And that also sounds like maybe Ruben can chime in. It's the work that they did as well. And it's some of what, if you think about Dennis's talk about Copper, they have a workflow and they'd like to be able to run their workflow and have it be decomposed into the specific calls, but the person doing it shouldn't have to know all those calls at once. So it's an opinionated thing, right? The wizard has opinions about how to do things, as opposed to the REST API, right?
Yeah, as you said it, we had the discussion at the CLI meeting. I always say the REST API defines what is possible, because everything that Pulp does needs to go through the API. So that's the universe. And with all the toolings, we want to choose the convenient things.
Right. And the danger, of course, is an opinionated workflow is great for the 80% of the users that do want to do that happy path. But Jared actually hit it really directly, is then the 20% that want to do something unique. Well, there's other ways to do that. You can talk directly. You can use PulpCLI. So we really, as long as we concentrate on making it generally useful, that would be a victory as far as I'm concerned.
So very specifically, when I go back to this Pulp file here, repositories, let's just try to create one. Very conveniently, it allows you to just right away create a distribution, it seems. You can make it private. You can select remote. That's already something I would guess. The one happy path is you have a repository, and that's the center of everything you do. You don't want to separately specify a repository, remote, I mean.
So you're suggesting have it auto create a remote, for example. You just specify the URL and have magic happen.
Basically, yeah.
I think we can probably go even further, where we divide it into like two main workflows: upload and sync. And then if you click on sync, you just specify the remote or the URL you want to sync from and its content type, and then it'll handle everything behind the scenes, creating the remote, creating the repository, forming the sync.
Yeah.
Publication, distribution, all automatically.
Well, for a perfect example, that is a perfect example. The number of times I find myself create a remote with the name test, create a repository with the name test, create a distribution with the name test. As long as there's a a well-defined definition of, if you give me this string, this is how it's going to show up in the name of the repository and in the path of your distribution, then as a standardized way, it makes it possible to have a wizard where you just, with one line, say, I want to sync test from this URL and create everything you need. And then magic happens and everything's named the way that I would expect.
That's basically most of the time. You have one upstream repository, you have the URL, and you maybe want to give a name or even get a suggested name.
Mm-hmm.
And then minutes later, you can install from there.
One thing I was thinking about with the design is, do we want the tabs on the side to be separated by plugin? If we're going to go an opinionated route, could we just make all the tabs on the side be generic objects, so like repositories, remotes, content, and then when we list it out, we just put like a little tag next to it saying like what type it is. So like if it's an RPM, it'll be RPM.
Mm-hmm.
So Ansible, it's Ansible. And then we kind of abstract away the fact that like all these APIs are, different endpoints to the end user. They're just choosing the type as like a drop down, and then Pulp does the rest before them.
This sounds interesting.
Yes. What I don't expect us is to make Pulp auto-detect if the URL points to whatever type of repository. I don't think we want to do that.
Yeah, definitely not. But I do think.
But having them all in one list sounds pretty nice.
Yeah.
I mean, you only see what your users are allowed to see anyway, so you don't get the way too long list just because you have 100 users on your installation.
Yeah, and we already have the generic endpoints, and in the generic endpoints, you can it returns the type. Well, you can infer the type from the PRN now, and so when we're creating the list in the Pulp-UI from the response, you can auto tag it based off the type. So then a user knows like, oh, okay, this repository is holding my RPMs. This one's holding my Python content.
Interesting.
So I think,
Yes, you've got. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, so from a kind of a developer standpoint, since I integrate with Pulp and Catello, I work with a lot of different Pulps, and maybe this is taking this a different direction, but it would be really nice if this UI had a way to manage different installations. Like if I could like upload my certificates to it and point it to all my different Pulps. Like I might at one time have, I don't know, 7 or 8 different Pulps that I'm working with just in different development environments. It'd be awesome to be able to switch between them. And even just having, maybe it sounds weird in a CLI, but just a place where I can throw just like basic API calls with a little bit of help to fill in some data, like freeform, would be really nice. Because sometimes the CLI doesn't support all the options I need to send, so I need to pop out the API, do some curling. But like something customizable like that, even if it gets a little dirty, could be helpful.
So in the CLI, there are the different profiles you can set up in the config. Right? Do you use those?
Yeah, I do have that, which is nice. Typically, it gets set up with Catello, just with how we install it. So I can point to like my smart proxy, which is a separate remote Pulp. But I was just like, if I had one Pulp CLI installation like on my laptop, that I could point to my dev VM, that I could point to my stuff in the cloud.
Ian?
Kind of neat.
Ian? This sounds like you really, really, really want to listen to Jeffrey Wilson's Introducing Pulp Manager tomorrow.
Okay.
because that's Jeffrey. I don't know if Jeffrey's on the call, but if he is, there he is. That sounds like a good idea. If that sounds like it's your jam, sir.
All right, right on.
Hopefully, yes.
Also, sorry, Jeffrey, go ahead.
I was just going to say, hopefully, Pulp Manager could help with that for sure, but we shall see. Might need a contribution.
Absolutely. PR is gracefully accepted is always our byline here.
Awesome.
Yeah. Let me just add to that, Ian. In the CLI, there is a debug call or debug OpenAPI call. It's a bit hidden for reasons, but it's a subcommand that helps you to set off any of the generic, not so much implemented calls without needing to go out to curl.
That would be very helpful. I'll have to look at this. Nice.
Yeah, it's for reasons. It's not so easy to use as the implemented calls. Let's call it like that. So on the other hand, for the UI, I think it's kind of really meant to be served right next to the API. And if you do that with all the Pulp installations, then you could point your different browser tabs at the same time to all the matching Pulps.
Yeah,
For
that
sure.
would be easy enough, for sure.
I don't think that the UI really is meant to support multiple at once.
Well, it could. There's a custom config. So like we load a JSON file in the UI. That inside the JSON file is where the URL gets set to point to the Pulp instance. And so technically in that JSON file, we could just set it up so that there's multiple profiles, and then like somewhere in like the user switch area, you can change which Pulp the current UI is displaying.
But I agree with Matthias that for 99% of users, it's meant to just be for one installation.
Sure.
Yeah, and
Power users are always the thing.
even if you have 3 installations, then if
Yeah,
the
you have
server
3 tabs.
serves you the UI, your browser is the point of multiplexing,
Yeah,
in my opinion.
Yeah, but
Alright,
so-
the main reason why I brought that up is because currently we don't support domains in the Pulp-UI.
Right.
And so that was one of the initial ideas for how do we support domains.
Which is actually a segue. I'm going to step in here because we're actually at time and we haven't gotten to the interesting question yet, which is what happens next. Because for folk who are new to this, this repo was donated and a bunch of work was done on it by folk who are UX people, but who've been retasked and absolutely do not have the time to support this right now. And most of us, in fact, pretty much all of us on the Pulp team are very much back-end developers, and you do not want us doing a lot of UX development. So where do we go next? We're at time. If you want to take a minute or two to give your thoughts on that, Matthias, before we break up. And leave some
I
for
think
Ian.
you summed up pretty nicely here. There are some pull requests I made that have not yet been reviewed by anyone, which is part of the issue. No one of us really is so much into JavaScript. And yeah, I think if we don't invest a lot of time, we don't even get it to the current state of what NPM is today.
That's really the biggest call to action that I have here is I would love to see. I mean, sure, that might help, Ruben, except that using AI requires the person using it to review what the AI is doing and going, yeah, that looks reasonable and isn't insecure and doesn't break things. I am not a pattern fly expert, React expert. I have no idea if what it's producing is usable or not. And I would hesitate to push it out there and say, hope it doesn't break your system.
Yeah, so part of the question is, do we want to get it in a state where we can where one can actually use it? And what do we invest there?
I mean, realistically, unless we hire someone, I think Ruben's idea of using AI is probably the only solution forward. Obviously, it's not the best, but AI is probably the most trained on JavaScript code, and so probably the best area for it to actually tackle. And if we want to actually implement any of this, it's probably the only way forward, unless we get a bunch of community users who are experts and want to help us out. But
Yeah, I mean, Pulp has quite a community. I mean, if you did a big upstream marketing effort, you know, tried to get people interested, maybe some people would come out of the woodwork.
That's why we're here.
Fair enough. I am, alas,
I mean,
going to have
to be quite pretty honest, we do this PulpCon online for our community.
Make it possible for folk to get here. I'm going to have to cut this short because we need to give Ian time to get set up for his presentation at the top of the hour. I kind of hate to do that.
No, it's okay. This discussion has meant to be time boxed, so thank you all for participating. Yeah, I think the wish list here is really appealing.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So thank you.
All right. Matthias, I'm going to stop the recording.